Any questions here?
Francis, I was reading in Wei Wu Wei last night, and I found this paragraph that was really fantastic. And it does raise a little bit of question. He's talking about our non-objective nature, and
it's a book by Wei Wu Wei, aka Terence Gray.
He's talking about our non-objective nature, which is, pretty much the whole book. And he says, we then realize that what we all are is not different, and that is at one-ment. There is no quote-unquote love in it, for love is an experience of separateness. And that crude form of affectivity called quote-unquote emotion is replaced by pure affectivity, which is probably what is meant by karuna, and which is closely associated with what may be indicated by the word joy. We do not then love, quote-unquote, others. We are, quote-unquote, others, and our phenomenal relation with them, quote-unquote, is simple, direct, spontaneous. It is immediacy, and its sole nature is joy. That really struck me because, this search for love, and it is often coming from a separateness sense, but we also talk about our true nature being beauty, love, truth. From an experiential sense, I know what he's talking about. I mean that when you do, there is that spontaneous just sense, like if being here sometimes is like there's no here, and you feel that, or in the sharing or whatever. Anyway, what does that say about love, I guess, is the question. Is he merely pointing to the fact that most of what we call love is just that attempt to overcome the apparent separateness from the standpoint of what we think we are?
Perhaps, yes. So the real experience of love is non-dual, is the abolition of the separation. It is the experience of the absence of separation. The experience of the absence of separation is the experience of love. But this experience is also the experience of happiness and of peace. Since as long as there is separation, there is no peace.
I mean, it really puts a different spin on the word love. It's like nothing like how we usually use the word.
Well, it depends, because we usually refer to an experience.
It's usually associated with an object or projected onto an object rather than... I see.
I don't know, because you can have love for object, but love for object is not in the object. And love for object is misguided love, but nevertheless it's love.
So what he's pointing to is simply our misguided notion.
When the object is seen without separation, there is no object any longer. And then there is only love. In fact, objects don't exist. Objects seem to exist due to a purely fictitious separation.
Yeah, we see ourselves as an object, and so there are other objects. So
Separation is never an experience. It's always a fiction.
we feel or there's some kind of...
we experience love. We cannot put our finger on it, usually.
We feel separation and we feel love.
No. When we feel love, there is no separation. And when we feel separation, it's something else than love.
Well, maybe we're...
Maybe desire, it may be longing, it may be, but it's not the experience of love. It's frustrated love, if you will.
If it's so general a quality, it just, you're pointing to the fact it is what we are when there's nothing in the way. So what I'm saying is that what we normally call love is not what we're talking about here at all. If you, like, someone is in a love relationship, the love we're talking about is experienced, could potentially be experienced anywhere at all times, because it has no boundaries, no who, no where.
The experience of love is the experience of our true nature. This gentleman, I think he rarely speaks of love in his writings.
It's the only time I saw it in there.
Because it's more about humor and his brilliant intelligence and paradoxical expressions, sometimes elliptic expressions. But I had the privilege to meet him in Monte Carlo. And when you met him, he was very different from, at least having read his book, my imagination of him was the picture my imagination was making of him. He was very silent and very welcoming, very deep in his silence, and you felt invited. So he was a man of silence. He drove a Rolls Royce. He owned waterfront property in Monaco.
Yeah, you told me about that.
The butler. He was a very nice man.
Yeah, when I read parts of this book, it's like concepts getting dissolved, and you just kind of end up sitting there watching yourself dissolve.
He offered me a glass of wine at 10 o'clock in the morning. I declined after breakfast. Although the wine was very good, I guess, because it was from his vineyards, and they were very good.
That's good to know. I've got a 11:30 date on Monday, and I really am tempted to have a beer because it was supposed to be a beer date, but the time got shifted. Anyway, thank you.
I wanted to follow up from yesterday, from my question yesterday, on not knowing where I am. So when you ask, do you know where you are? No, I don't know where I am. At that moment, when I don't know where I am, is sort of a glimpse. Is this a true glimpse of what I really am?
Well, it's not that we don't know what we are. You see? It's rather that we know what we are not. Somehow, because we know that we are the perceiver somehow. We know that we are consciousness. We know that our reality can only be, if I speak as a physicist, that which is invariant, that which doesn't change, that which is invariant, that which is conserved throughout our life experiences. And the only invariant part of our experience, element of our experience, is the perceiving. Everything else changes. Everything which is perceived changes. Therefore, since our reality has to be that which is invariant, it follows that our reality is consciousness. And we know consciousness. Otherwise, we wouldn't even talk about it. It's not that we don't know what we are. But what we are is not a phenomenon. What we are is that which perceives the phenomena. The centrality of our human experience, if you will. So, because in fact we know what we are, it enables us to discriminate and to know what we are not. Which can, to know what we are not, sometimes we say, well, that's, I don't know what I am. And what it means, I don't know what I am, it means I cannot find myself as an object. That's what it really means. So in that sense, the only reason why I don't know what I am is because I know what I am. I don't know what I am because I cannot know myself as an object.
Yes, so I don't know what I am, but I am anyways.
Yeah.
But
we know, you know I am. How could you possibly know that you are without knowing that which you are? How could you possibly know that you are without knowing that which you are?
It's impossible. So what I am is timeless, as Dayani says. So why is it that glimpses don't immediately shift from ignorance to freedom? Why does it seem like that timeless has to sort of stretch out?
Because you're expecting something else than a glimpse. A glimpse does its job.
But the behavior of the one who...
For instance, if a child, if we take the analogy with Santa Claus, right? And you have this child, and if the child thinks that a glimpse about Santa Claus is going to give him a free lunch at Toys R Us, he's mistaken. So it's the same thing if we believe that a glimpse of truth is going to give us a big phenomenal object, big experience, very enjoyable, very juicy, we are mistaken. Freedom is not juicy. Freedom is free. So the freedom of the belief in Santa Claus is freedom. It's not a toy or access to more toys. As a person, in ignorance, we always seek toys to fill the emptiness, to abolish the separation. The glimpse is a glimpse that there has never been a separation. But we expect a toy that is going to fill the void. For instance, when I said that we cannot know that we are without knowing that which we are, you conveniently went on a tangent. You didn't stay with what I said. Why?
Because it seems obvious that is the case, but when I observe my behavior in daily life, it's different than...
When you observe your behavior, you don't know what you are, because it would be okay to, let's say, it would be okay to say, I observe my behavior in the same way as I observe the weather, because I know they are part of the same unfolding of the universe. Is that the way you observe your behavior?
Not really. Sometimes I feel that it's bad or that.
You see, the weather, okay, today there is no sun, at least for the time being. That's what it is, you see what I mean? I observe the weather. It's the universe unfolding, it's nice. I mean, it's a Shropshire-like day, less the cold. So it gives us an inkling of what it is up there in Oxford.
And this is exactly the problem. Is that when I observe my behavior and I see that it does not reflect what the one who has understood the final question, I want to behave like them. And if it seems like something has to happen in order for that behavior to come about, otherwise I can't fake to behave like.
Yeah, but it is not about faking anything. It's about understanding that there is no such a thing as a personal behavior. That there is only universal behavior. And so to take this personal behavior in yourself and in others, you see, that's the beauty of it. Because the moment you stop judging yourself, because you think that you are responsible as a person for your past actions, you stop also seeing other people responsible for their actions. You see everything as the weather. It completely changes your take. It doesn't mean that if it rains, you have to go outside in the rain. In other words, it doesn't mean that you don't have to adapt your action to the conditions. But this adaptation of your behavior to the conditions is part of the universal behavior, if you will. It's normal, it's natural. It becomes non-natural the moment you believe to be a separate person behaving in a certain way.
Okay, let me ask this way. Suppose someone says something to you in an aggressive way, and you need to say something aggressive back, even though you're saying something aggressive back to them, the one who has understood still has a sense of peace and calm underneath. Yes?
It depends.
Because to me, that's totally gone. That doesn't stay during that time. The understanding is gone during the times like when it actually matters.
But my question is, what I have in your question, what I am hearing, is a desire to change the universe. So good luck with that. That which changes the way the universes is this insight that at all times it is the universe universing. So you don't make any distinction between what comes from within your reaction and the rain, or a reaction that comes in another person without. Because it's the same force, it's the same movement, it's a universal motion.
And this understanding also comes just that way as well. It just sort of comes about. There's not really anything.
Yes, this understanding comes from the understanding that there is no local decision maker.
Because you've said that it is understanding that liberates. And then when I think about what is said, it's I understand. I understand what is being said.
Not enough.
So the understanding is not on what we're speaking. It's something.
There are layers. There are layers. Every time you pierce a layer, there is a form of understanding. The question is, are there layers that remain? In other words, is it really your understanding that at all times it is the universe universing and that there is no personal actor, personal doer?
No.
You see. So what is it that you have understood then? If you still believe that there is a personal doer, a personal decider.
So what is understanding then?
For instance, see that when you think, when a thought comes to you, you don't choose it. Is that clear to you, that you don't choose your thoughts?
Yes, because I don't know what my next thought will be. I only know the one that's...
Yeah, we don't know what the next thought is going to be, right? Therefore, we don't choose our thoughts as a person, right?
Yes.
Because a person itself is a thought. So, a thought cannot choose another thought.
Yes.
So the thought comes to us, and our decisions come also as thoughts. They are a subset of the set of all thoughts. Our decisions, our decisional thoughts.
So the sage sees a thought.
Don't worry about the sage. Worry about you.
Okay, so I see a thought come up. Sometimes there's a distance between the thought and me, what I am, and sometimes there's not.
No, that's not my question. Do you choose the thoughts that arise?
No.
So, decisions come to you as thoughts.
Yes.
So, it follows that you don't choose the decisions that arise.
True.
So if you don't choose the decisions that arise, how could you be a doer?
I couldn't.
So because remember, I asked you, do you believe to be a doer? You said yes. Now you say no. So make up your mind.
So right here exactly is the point then. So I'm saying no because I've understood what you said, but this is not what understanding is, right?
Understanding is understanding. If you understood to understand what I said means to verify that what I said experientially within you. In other words, to verify that what I said is your experience. That's what is important. What my experience is, the experience of the sage or whoever, is not important. What is important is your experience. So, and what I said is not important. It's only important as a pointer that points to your own experience, and the understanding takes place when you say, yes, that's true because that's my experience. So then, if it is your experience that you don't choose your thoughts, that they come to you like the weather, you don't choose the weather we have today, you didn't choose it. You don't choose your next thought, it comes to you like the weather, whether you like it or not. Maybe a nice thought, maybe an ugly thought, right? So you don't choose it. And your decisions, they come as thoughts, therefore you don't choose your decisions. And then your body is just like a tool that obeys the decision that has come. So the body doesn't decide, right? So, meaning that if the body doesn't decide, and if there is no personal decider, local decider here, it means that all the decisions are simply simulated decision of a simulated personal decider, which himself is a thought that arises. And thoughts don't think, therefore thoughts don't decide. So, in other words, think about that. I am not a thought. You are not a thought. You are that which thinks the thought. And that which thinks the thought is not limited, because it has no shape, no form. Anyway, I've said a lot, but to go back to your question, and to sum it up, you are unhappy about some of your behavior that you would like to change. You would like your behavior, your reaction to be different. And your thoughts to be different, frankly, right? The thoughts are, gee, again, to be replaced by, So you have to understand that the first thing to see is that you are not in charge of your thoughts, in charge of your decisions, and therefore you are not in charge of your behavior. That your behavior is that's the way the universe behaves locally, is behaving locally in this body, as this body. And simultaneously, the universe is behaving locally, differently, in this body here, as this body. That's all. But it's all the universe. The universe is not confined or limited, confined to this body or limited to this body, nor is it confined to the or that body. So in this moment, in this very moment, everything is just the universe, the reality, if you prefer, because universe is too restrictive. The reality playing.
So the event that I am looking for is not really going to happen, is basically what this says. Because the I is not anything.
What is going to change is, of course, any behavior which was based upon the belief to be a separate doer. The moment this belief goes away, the behavior that originated from this belief will go away also, will disappear also. Are you following me?
Thank you.
It seems to me in the past I've heard you speak of a glimpse as a sort of an initial brief experience, but the actual realization is over a period of time usually. That we have certain habitual things, and we have to be very alert to this.
Yes.
Being aware, continually reminding ourselves in all situations that we are not, so that we can, and over time, it becomes a reality that you've spoken of. But it's not something you can expect, in most cases, to happen after one glimpse.
But what you said ties to the last thing I said, is that to the extent that a belief disappears, the behavior that was associated with this belief disappears also. But there is a delay between disappearance of the belief, which is a product of the glimpse, and the disappearance of the behavior because of some kind of inertia of acquired habits that have become now obsolete and in fact at odds with the truth of our understanding, but nevertheless tend to come back to the surface, to reoccur as automatism. It's just that as they reoccur, they generate suffering. The suffering is an alarm signal that enables us to become aware of this reoccurrence. And then this reoccurrence is traced back to its origin, the sense of separation, and then the glimpse is still present at the origin. The glimpse never goes away. And so then the glimpse which is always present is a black hole for ignorance. It swallows ignorance as soon as ignorance comes close to it, in its vicinity, and can never reoccur. It's swallowed forever. And the same process can reoccur again, and in this way, all the residues, all this automatism come to an end. The yoga could be, if I keep the metaphor, of the black hole. You know, the black hole, normally a star is going to be in orbit around the black hole and spiral down and then be sucked in. So then the yoga is like adding an engine that adds some thrust to the orbiting object to throw it directly into the black hole. So it accelerates its demise.
Continuing. Isn't this what we call the path? We don't use that word here very much, I've noticed. But it is, you've talked about progressive path and direct path. I assume, I'm talking with other people I've known a long time, I was on a progressive path for a number of years. But when I got here and learned about direct path, my experience was the same before. But we have to habituate, the words you've used. We can have a glimpse, and we have certain patterns, vasanas, and we have to change over time. It's not, we're going to wake up today because I'm on a direct path. I have to change these patterns slowly through my however rapidly my system adapts. Isn't that what we can call the path?
Well, we have to understand the difference between the direct path and the progressive path. And the difference is that the direct path is merciless with the belief to be a separate
My path was merciless.
person.
But you have defined it
In
as
other
progressive.
words, merciless meaning this thought is not allowed in. This belief is not condoned. This belief is not the pet project which is being kept again and again and again. And in other words, on the direct path begins where the gradual path stops.
I didn't notice much.
The gradual path, the direct path
Progressive. You're using
for progressive,
yeah.
or gradual, progressive. The direct path begins when the gradual path stops. The gradual path, on the gradual path, there is a belief that there is a truth seeker, a disciple, a person, journeying towards enlightenment. That's the progressive path. The direct path begins with the glimpse that there is no such a person.
So people that come here, the question that Igor's asking, he's on a progressive path.
What?
Igor is describing a progressive path by he's saying, I understand these things. No, I don't, because you're convincing him otherwise.
Well, for you, perhaps, for Igor, I don't know. I don't speak for Igor, or for you. So for you or for Igor, perhaps there is an Igor on the progressive path, but not for me.
I understand that. I guess what I wanted to get...
So you are not going to pull me down to the progressive path, no matter how...
I'm not trying to, Francis.
How much you try. So, you see, the glimpse is irreversible. The glimpse that consciousness is universal and not separate and limited. That consciousness is the reality. This glimpse is irreversible. But we can always, by some form of habit, reconstruct the fairy tale and pretend that the glimpse has not happened. But from the vantage point of the glimpse is the reality. And the fairy tale will come to an end. Everything which is fictitious will come to an end. Everything which is true will be shown to be true. You see, that's... you cannot cover forever the reality. That's the power of truth.
Okay, thank you.
It's true, you know, it's true in politics too. At some point the truth will come up.
It does all the time for me.
I want to explore a little more of the will or the will estate, non-volitional living.
What? Article.
I
don't know. Reminds me of my kid, you know. My American kid. I couldn't understand him. No, Donnie.
Thank you for the reminder. So here I am talking using my will, but it's not my will. And I guess I'm trying to have an image of it, and it's impossible in terms of, it's easier to understand that the notion of self-will arises from the mistaken idea that we're a separate entity. How can something separate have a will, because it's just determined by the entire puzzle piece that it's a part of? It kind of reminds me of the mind and body problem, where philosophers would say, well, if the mind is immaterial, how can it affect a material entity? Somehow there's absolute freedom where is it? I mean,
can you formulate a question which has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and which I can answer, basically?
no, I can't.
At least.
I think it answers itself. So thank you for being a sounding board. It's very paradoxical, the notion of will. I guess I just have to sit with it. I mean, I kind of see it in act of service, what you call service. Talking with someone, and I mean, I'm referring to the past, but then you can see it's like, I mean, the theological language, the will of God. You've given up unwillingly your will temporarily, and things just happen, and then you see, oh, I served. That's love. It just happens by itself. So, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, I guess.
Yes, the body is just an instrument in the hands of the universal reality. And so is the physical universe also.
I like the movie metaphor, I guess. We're all just characters in this play. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, I guess maybe because my action comes as an artist sometimes, my questions will circle around and they're not very linear. This experience is apparently like we appear to be living as a linear perceiving entity, but we're not really that. And so that comes through the fact that
we are a perceiving entity. We are the perceiving entity, because only a real entity can really perceive, right? A fake entity cannot really perceive. So only a real entity can really perceive. Therefore, only something which is autonomous, independent, can really perceive.
When you say autonomous and independent, it brings to mind the image of an object, something autonomous. What you mean is self-acting,
Autonomous means the existence of which doesn't depend upon anything else. This type of independence. It's not relative independence, it's absolute independence. Something can be absolutely real only if it is absolutely independent. Something can be absolutely real only if it is absolutely independent. In other words, absolute reality implies absolute independence. Otherwise, the reality is hostage of something else. Therefore, it's not real. For instance, the existence of the movie depends on the TV set, somehow, right?
No, there's no separate thing acting on a separate thing. It's just...
There is only one extraordinary, non-local reality. I was reading a book on physics the other day, and there was this interesting remark that if we had a theory of everything in physics that explains the origin of the universe, right? The Big Bang theory out of nothing. Well, in order for, if we had such a theory, it means that which follows this Big Bang moment or singularity follows the laws of physics as expressed in this theory of everything. Therefore, that the theory of everything must have pre-existed the Big Bang. And that's very interesting, because then it takes away the materiality. You see what I mean? That the laws, I think a lawyer should be happy about that. That the laws are more real than the material that matter. No.
Yeah, it seems like describing freedom is almost impossible. It's more like just ex post facto.
We are the freedom we are trying to describe. That's that simple. We are inherently free as this consciousness, and we are totally devoid of the slightest speck of freedom as an illusory, fictitious, separate entity. So the fictitious entity has a fictitious, limited freedom.
So that thought actually comes in after the... I was trying to see how how that works. If there's a sequence, like there's a presupposition of being a self, and then we assume there's a personal will after we do something.
It's interesting, it's like we are avatars as human beings in a simulation. So from within the simulated world, is it possible to realize that it is a simulation? That's a food for thought.
That's the Matrix movie right there. I would say no. It has to be the simulator.
Yeah. Even if it is designed, what does it mean to be designed? The simulated avatar has no access to the kitchen table of the game designer, right?
Thank you.
Francis, can that simulated character have designed knowing that there is such thing as a programmer, but it never, there's no ability to access the programmer's mind or the programmer's kitchen or bathroom. And if it is designed to access his kitchen, it will not be designed to access the time when he's on the bus, for example, right? So it all has to be designed by the programmer, if you will. But because we are able to have these conversations, there has to be some design within it that has glimpses of there is such thing as a programmer. Because otherwise we wouldn't know there is consciousness.
Yeah, but the truth is that we are, the only possible explanation is that we are both the designer and the avatar. And so that the designer, having designed the game, enjoys playing the game, and in order to enjoy playing the game, he has to identify with the avatar. Right? But
Otherwise it would be super boring.
At the same time, he knows he is a designer. So then he may have put in the game reminders that he is a designer, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just because he is a designer that he can be reminded. The avatar can never be reminded.
Right. And that design to know for the avatar to have a glimpse of the designer is perhaps there because the designer, otherwise it would be maybe super boring.
Because
right?
the avatar is not conscious in the first place,
He'll be
you see.
running around back and forth.
The avatar is devoid of consciousness. The avatar is just a fictitious entity.
And then
it's like a corporation.
Right.
Right?
Who's in charge? Right.
It's in France we call those moral persons. They are in fact very immoral, but we call those moral person morale. I don't know what you say here for this, but it's not physical, but can be represented, can start a lawsuit, etc. You go to court, legal entity. Yeah.
And then with when you guys were talking with Igor, you mentioned that we don't choose our thoughts. We it's all after the fact where we take them on as, oh, that was me who chose this thought, right? But one thing came up that, you're sitting here also because some other thoughts brought you here as well, and that you didn't choose either. So in some weird way, you're sitting here that was also chosen. So it's, I don't know, I just
Yeah, but there is a moment when we choose. The moment we don't identify with a separate person and the decision comes, it truly comes from us. Because the moment we don't identify with a separate person, we are truly what we are. So then these are true decisions. And this is a real exercise of our freedom. However, this freedom is exercised as consciousness, is not as a human being. So the decision to come here may very well be our decision, but in this case we have to say it's my decision as this beautiful self, right?
Thank you.
So it's not very difficult to be universal, because we already are. You see? That's very simple. Okay. Monica, can you please explain to me how do you know, if, as I believe you really know, that what you are and that I am will never end? First of all, we have to make clear that what I am and what you are is the consciousness which is hearing these words. That's the first step. Then we have to realize that we have no evidence that this consciousness is dependent upon the body. There is no doubt that the body has a beginning and an end. At least it has an end. But for consciousness to have an end would require for it to be dependent upon the body. So somehow you may have the belief that you possess somewhere the evidence that the consciousness is dependent upon the body. So the second step will be to revisit this evidence and to convince yourself, which is very, very feasible, that this evidence doesn't pass the smell test of scrutiny. So, in other words, that there is no real evidence that consciousness is dependent upon the body. So then you move from a situation in which you are certain that consciousness comes to an end to a situation in which you really don't know. So you have to be equally open in the absence of evidence one way or the other. You have to allocate your bets 50-50. That's the wise way to play with your money. So, in the absence of any form of evidence, the wise thing to do is to say, well, these two possibilities are equally probable. Of course, the probability that your consciousness never ends is kind of more interesting and more conducive to happiness. And since you have lived many, many years based on the other possibility, why not give yourself some vacation from the mortal consciousness world to live a few months in the eternal consciousness world and see when you live in this way, what happens. I cannot tell you what's going to happen. I cannot give you the details, the phenomenal aspect of it. But in terms of peace and happiness, I can tell you, you will experience peace and happiness. And in terms of the phenomena, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how the phenomenal events will conspire to convince you of your eternity. Now there is another path, which is to understand that consciousness is real. It will require to eliminate from your mind the belief that that is not the case. So ask yourself the question. Let's assume that consciousness is an illusion, it's not real. How could there possibly be, for me, the knowledge or the experience of any reality? You will, by dwelling into this thought will lead you to the recognition of the reality of consciousness. And the reality of consciousness means that which by nature, by essence, as Spinoza would say, exists. That which could not exist. In other words, that which is eternal. That's a philosophical approach. So I gave you two paths, the experiential path or experimental path, and the philosophical path, if you will. And there is no prohibition against trying both, depending on your mood, on the mood of the day. Mihai, my two questions today are related to yesterday's dialogue in relation to old habits, as well as the idea to not go for a hunting party for unresolved issues. Last period of inquiry and truth-loving brought me to a less philosophical realm, but to being forced to face my own shit. One, for various reasons, known and unknown, since early childhood I developed the ability to hide, lie, withhold, and deceive in order to get what I want, avoid trouble, avoid interference, avoid people being upset with me. Although throughout the decades, I thought I have made great progress towards eradicating this tendency, life and the universe show me that it still exists, like a hidden animal in the basement that comes out when needed and hijacks my identity and becomes I and operates as before. Life is flushing this in my face and all the stinking stuff that this brings. So I'm smelling it and I see how it solves a beautiful house for me and my friends. I started recently some informal sessions of confessions with a close truth lover friend, and it has been liberating to confess lies and secrets. How would you recommend to tackle these unresolved issues that still bring some misery from the vantage point that now I am certain about who or what I am? Still, this is happening. First, all this wrong behavior or unethical behavior or whatever comes from fear. And fear comes from ignorance. And ignorance is something that that consciousness has chosen. Not you as a person. Consciousness has chosen ignorance, just as consciousness or reality chooses the weather. So, what has happened in the past is not the product of your actions as a separate individual. Everything you do which is based upon this belief only perpetuates the problem. Having lied in the past, I mean, it's only normal. I mean, can you imagine a child, you know? If he does something, he knows he's going to get spanked or worse, right? To be slapped in the face. Or not to have dinner, or something like that. I mean, who wouldn't lie? Come on, education is quite often a lying school. The parents in society takes the children to lying school by punishing them if they tell the truth, right? I mean, so why is a child responsible for lying it's a way of protecting who likes to be slapped in the face or go to bed without dinner or whatever. So, why should you make amend and why should you confess to a third person, a priest or whoever, you know, about things that are, first, you are not responsible for, and nobody is responsible for, because the only one who is responsible for it is the universe in the first place. So let the universe take responsibility for it. I mean, there is no need to go into the past. There is no need to I'm not going to continue your smelly metaphor. But there is no need to dwell there. It's different with regard to your current action or current decision. If I have done something wrong in the past and I need to fix it, yeah, sure. And now, as a universe, if I need to tell the truth, I tell the truth. But if I need to lie, I lie. You know, there is not a universal rule that in no circumstance you're going to not to lie. Often there's holy lies. There are holy killings. There are holy lies. There are holy cheatings. There are holy stealings. An example of holy lie: you live in occupied France, and there is this Jewish family hiding in some house, being protected by some neighbor. You know they are there, you know you have seen the children. And there is this guy come with a long black leather coat. And he asks you, are there any Jews in the area? You say, what? No. It's a holy lie. So you can figure out about the holy murders and the holy everything else. Number 2, I am also aware of another swamp creature within myself that is quite impulsive, has very little ability to self-control, hijacks a taxi and takes it wherever it wants, issues with addiction, with all kinds of stuff, and pursuit of pleasure are connected to this. This also feels to me like a bad habit and unresolved issue, for it goes against what my intelligence tells me, but I'm not able to have control over it, as it keeps arising periodically. It does not want to be seen and dwelt upon, and continues with its operations in spite of my overall happier, peaceful life due to knowing myself as consciousness and being able to be that knowingly in large segments of my life. Well, obviously, according to your description, there are other segments of your life in which you don't know yourself as universal consciousness. So, or even in which you are not open to the possibility, simply open to the possibility that you are universal consciousness. These segments of your life, what is important is not to do anything about them, but to contemplate their shrinking. They will shrink in the light of your understanding. You're just kind of, but understand that if you try to change yourself, you perpetuate the fictitious self. You know, that's very important, because the fictitious self is the source of all the issues you are trying to eliminate or to resolve. That's the mother of all problems. So, above all, you should avoid doing anything that condones, that strengthens this belief to be a separate entity. You should know with the utmost clarity that this is the culprit. This is the mother of all problems. Otherwise, you are caught in an endless repetition, in an endless running in circles. Because you perpetuate the source of the problem by trying to alleviate a symptom of the problem.
Is that the origin of the word karma that they were trying to point to?
No.
Stuck in being reincarnated?
I'm not going there. You have to ask the Dalai Lama. Not an expert in reincarnation. Rob, after years with progressive path, I have glimpses of impersonal awareness as the most truthful reality and as the most intimate sense of self. That said, there is no sense of the unity of all manifestations. Awareness is not personal and yet not universal. How should I best inquire further into the reality of awareness? It depends on what you mean by reality. One, we know that awareness is real because even if we are making something up, our awareness of that which we are making up is real. The awareness of a dream is real. We cannot put under the rug awareness. In this moment, awareing is happening, if you will. We cannot pretend there is no awareness. There is not a single moment when we can pretend that there is not awareness. People who say, oh, sometimes I'm aware, sometimes I'm not. It's stupid. Because how do they know that they are not aware? Unless they are aware not to be aware. But in which case they are aware. So either they are bullshitting us by saying there are moments when I am aware, or if they say that from experience, it means that they are aware of not being aware, which is a form of awareness. So awareness is constant, endless. That's our experience. There is something else. Often, what we call reality is something else. We say, yes, awareness is real in this sense because it's undeniable. But what I call reality is this material object. Often we identify reality with physicality, with materiality. These are different things. But then the question becomes, yes, awareness seems to be thought-like and not chair-like or flower-like, not matter-like. So, how can I know that there is a connection between awareness and matter? All it takes is to be open to this possibility. Because as long as we construe awareness as being thought-like, we prevent it from being from showing its true colors. And in particular, from showing its matter-like aspect, and in this, using this meaning of the word reality, its reality-like aspect. So the precondition for that is to be open to the possibility that consciousness not only is that which creates thoughts and sustains them, but also that it is that which creates matter and sustains it. If you are open to that, reality will prove itself to you. Akshay, in one of your YouTube videos, you mentioned that being aware and being aware of being aware are two different experiences. You also say that being aware of being aware is the highest form of happiness. I'm unable to get around it. Could you please elaborate? Well, if we say I'm aware of the flower, I perceive the flower, and if we say I'm aware of being aware of the flower, which is I'm aware of being aware, these are two different of experience. Because that which we are aware of is different. In one case, that which we are aware of is the flower. In the other case, that which we are aware of is awareness. Now, there are several possibilities. We can be aware of the flower without being aware of our awareness. We can be aware of our awareness without being aware of the flower. We can be aware of our awareness and be aware of the flower. Something which is impossible, and I'm sorry, fella, because you are again going to write to me by saying that God is, as a result, not omnipotent. But the thing which is not possible is not to be aware, either or both, of neither of awareness nor of something. This is not possible. Why? Because when we say it's not possible, we have to say, we say implicitly, for whom? And implicitly we answer, for me. But me equals awareness. So it is impossible for awareness not to be aware. So the only three possibilities are being aware of the flower and not of awareness and not the flower, and of awareness and of the flower, or any other object, of course. The flower is just a placeholder here. The only case in which there is no peace is awareness of the flower alone. Because peace and happiness equals awareness of awareness. So, Bennett, choice or not choice, that is the question. On the question of do we choose our thoughts, it appears to me that it is my experience that while I may not be the source of all my thoughts, I do have the ability to influence the direction or general topic of my thoughts. I can choose to dwell on the horror movie I saw last week, or the news from CNN may be the same thing. Or I can pick up an inspired text or tune into the satsang and direct my thought in that direction. It sure feels like there is someone here having some influence on my thoughts and experience. It seems to be that I both have and don't have influence on my thoughts. For example, I can choose to get into my car and drive to town to go shopping. Exactly when I will arrive, who I will see when I get home, etc., are up for grabs, but I still choose to go to town, thus directing the general flow of my experience but not having specific control of each individual interaction. Is it not possible there is both a doer and a non-doer at the same time? Question. Is it possible to have two thoughts at the same time without having these two thoughts merging into one? And then this one thought or decision, for instance, decision to focus, decision to alter the course of my pre-existing thought. Do you choose it? Okay, it was a brief answer because it was just hints so that you can do your homework. Lion. I've just jumped in. New connection format works. I've not heard the answer to my question previously as neither your nor my connection worked. Inside was building up a lot and finally I went with my 8 years main Gorunita Ayahuasca this weekend. Just have come back and it was a truly liberating breakthrough. First time ever I jumped into the unknown without fear, like it was the known. Well, your words still sound a little bit like ayahuasca. First time ever I would move and groove as the cosmic serpent myself, being awake throughout the whole trance, resting in peace within and beyond trance, and fully being this all-pervading whatever it truly is. I am this tremendous cozy sense of love and peace, relaxing the physical body back into child-flexible nature. I still do not understand a thing. Even so describing with words, it is incomprehensible what I am, and yet it is absolute freedom and sweet expanded coziness. Follow the master's word, enthusiasm, best pointer. Well, Ryan, I'm happy to see you in a good mood. Apparently there is a sound and video synchronization issue being experienced. I would suggest that when that happens, you try to restart your player. Because from my end here, everything seems to be okay, meaning we are beaming to the server, and then whatever happens from the server is out of our control. But it may be an issue that may be resynchronized if you restart your... Another question from Monica. No. Not the same. Tom, I have to answer Tom, at least one of his questions. You say we are not separate selves, but we do have mind and bodies, which if neglected or misused will become unhealthy. So how do we balance these two contradictory statements or truth? We, as consciousness, are not our bodies or our minds. Our bodies or minds are our vehicles and our tools. So how do we balance these two statements? I mean, they don't need to be balanced because they are not contradictory. We are consciousness and we are driving the body, which is our vehicle. Now, consciousness, we don't have to take care of it. That's good. The body, the vehicle, we had to make sure it is properly maintained if we want to get some interesting mileage out of it and enjoy the journey. Esim, so that will be the last question. Thank you for your advice about my mother. She has survived the surgery. Just I've done what you told me and spoke about my feelings with her. Long touching talks with nice stories and tears happened. Practical question about the retreat. If someone has very strong and nearly unbearable sensations in the body because of contraction, habit and fear, in which cases you would suggest to go to the retreat nevertheless or stay at home? Consider also a person in such a circumstance can also disturb other people in the retreat, perhaps. I still welcome you at the retreat. Take your medication with you if you are used to taking some, but you're still welcome there. That's it. Thank you.